Hello everyone, maybe this will be the run. I'm just gonna keep freaking trying. I'm not gonna record my voice for this one, except this very beginning bit just to show you. There you go. Historical settings, regular, no countries buffed, all that good stuff. Ragnarök, let's go. Oh, and if you're curious, this is the Oblivion soundtrack, by the way. Hello everybody, ignore the gentleman talking a moment ago. He's in the past, I know more. He sounded rather down, as you may have noticed. This is because he has run this particular scenario a number of times, and to say the least, they did not go his way. I, on the other hand, am buoyed with enthusiasm because, and spoiler alert, although I did spoil it in the title of the video, I freaking did it! Let's go! I did it! I won Ragnarök on brutal difficulty in the 1937 start on the new patch, and I'm extraordinarily pleased with myself, as I tend to be when I accomplish these kinds of things. So I'm going to have a crack at editing this together for you. The original footage is 5.5 hours long, which will be available on the channel, uploaded very shortly after this video. So, you know, you can see how I did every little bit if you want, but there is no commentary on the full 5.5 hour version, so, you know, view at your own discretion. I haven't edited before, so this could be interesting and take a while, but we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. So hopefully, enjoy. Let's see what I did. So a quick word on production. What I went for in this mod. As you can see, I delete the motorized, I delete the close air support, I delete the TAC bombers, I deleted the tanks. I decided that all of these are not nearly as important as trying to get as many guns as possible, and that mostly means infantry equipment. We needed just bodies, we needed combat width to fill the ridiculous amount of frontline we're suddenly going to have to hold in less than a year, and we needed some planes would be really useful, but it's so much more important that we just have the manpower fielded that we can really hold these front lines. Of course, it also helps if we go heavily on infantry equipment. It means we can get the Anschluss done really early. As you can see, I do deploy a couple of ships. To this day, I don't think I have deployed the Navy. So I really don't think it's... I don't think that was necessary, but I don't think it really hurt, because the only thing I gain from not deploying those ships is some extra convoys, and really, who cares about that? As you can see, I do drop a save right at the start, just because I wanted to make sure, if I wanted to run it again, I didn't have to set up all the basic stuff at the beginning again, because, I mean, like, you know, it's waste of 5 minutes setting everything up again at the beginning. If you still consider it save scumming, then, you know, you have, you know, I will defend till the death your right to be wrong, but, you know, there you go. I consider land doctrines for a while. Obviously, we have 2 of the mobile warfare already unlocked, which makes it very tempting to stay mobile warfare. But looking at it, in terms of infantry bonuses, the only one that I really valued in mobile warfare is the plus 15 organization. And superior firepower has plus 10 organization and a whole bunch of other bonuses. Namely, it gives 20% more soft attack and 20% more defense in the first 3. Before the war starts, realistically, we can only get the first 3 doctrines if we want to switch. So I eventually decide I do want to go with superior firepower, just because that 20% soft attack is really valuable. I think soft attack is the most important stat in this mod. If you're trying to do this for yourself, soft attack is the most important. You might think it's defense because you're going to be constantly defending, but realistically, if you're playing at all well, your defense will already be high enough. Because remember, your defense only needs to match the defense of your opponent's forces. It doesn't need to exceed their attack. As long as your defense is 1 higher than their attack, you get the maximal bonus from your defense. You could make your defense 1,000 times higher than their attack, and as I understand it, that would still make no difference. It's just the same as if you have slightly higher defense. So don't double down on all kinds of bonuses to defense. What you want is attack. Even on the defense, attack is so much more valuable. And of course, attack has the advantage that you use it on the attack and the defense, whereas defense is only used on the defense. So here you see I'm about to make the switch. Let's do this thing. Let's go. You can see I'm noticing this. You know, it's only 5 less, and it still gives you the delay tactic. It's pretty good. But yeah, so we do go for superior firepower, which I know is now considered the weakest doctrine in the new patch. But I think just the first 3 and 4 of superior firepower are really strong compared to the others. In mobile warfare, all, like the third one, fourth one, fifth one, and sixth one are all literally useless to us in this mod because they all regard tanks, and we're not producing tanks. We do not have the industry to field a large enough tank corps to actually make a difference. So that's why we end up going with superior firepower. And hey, it turns out well, so, you know. Next, I look at the focuses. I decided to go straight for the war economy. I decided to not build many forts in this run and just go really heavy on banging out those military factories. So I double down on it there with the military advice. Sorry, the political advisor that gives more military construction speed. Obviously, I'm building in the high infrastructure areas first. So I went, I went really hard on trying to get more and more divisions out because yes, you can build a fort and you can give the enemy, you know, one level fort, 500 production power, 7% debuff. But if I can, you know, on one tile. But if I can get, you know, if I could use that 500 production power, obviously, you know, it's a lot more than 500 production power to throw out a mill factory. But if I can get a mill factory out instead, and, you know, that mill factory is going to keep paying dividends as the campaign goes on, getting me more and more divisions out. Whereas the fort is kind of a short-term bonus, in my opinion, because the fort, you know, the fort's not going to gain experience. The fort's not going to really make a huge difference in the long term. So we go hard on the military factories, and I think that was a good decision. In terms of distribution of military factories, we're not going with any line artillery. I drop another save because I wanted to test whether or not you should go with line artillery or not. So you know, as I can see, I'm naming this save. What did I call it? Something like no line artillery versus line artillery. I wanted to see how many more divisions you could deploy by the time the war starts if you use 0 line artillery. In the end, I never end up going back to that save. I don't think. I know I do, but for a different reason. We'll go into that in a second. But yeah, no line artillery, 100% the way to go. I've been told that line artillery has been nerfed. I've played this campaign a few times. I freaking believe it. The no line artillery divisions, you can get so many more of them out, which helps you fill that front, which, as I was talking about, was just ridiculously important. And so generally, I think, yeah, building excess artillery would have been the death of us in this campaign. It was so much more important just to power out that support equipment for engineers, mostly for engineers, and powering out that infantry equipment to get bodies in the field. That's what I think, anyway. So here's something I think I did quite well in the introductory phase, you know, the build-up period, the 1 year you get. It's really important that you balance your military factories well. You need to make sure that you're meeting all your deficits at a consistent rate. And you could go in and do a whole load of maths that would let you do all that, you know, very easily. I didn't. Someone make a spreadsheet or like an app. I would buy that app. Someone make an app which works out the length of the number of divisions. Sorry, the number of mill factories you have to put. The ratio of mill factories you need to put on infantry equipment, artillery, support equipment, all that kind of stuff, given your division template. That would be glorious. And it could just tell you exactly how much you need. But yeah, so most of the intro is just concerned with trying to keep those balanced, just speed 5ing through, taking focuses, all that good stuff. So here's where I make the first and only actual big mistake that I think I made in this series, like the really big mistake. As you can see, if you take the war economy focus, you need to have at least 50% war support or you get general strikes when you're on war economy. Problem with that, obviously, is before the war breaks out, there's no world tension, there's no war support. There's no real way for me to gain war support quickly without compromising my stability or political power. Now, I know from previous runs that I can raise the world tension sufficiently by justifying on both the Soviet Union and the United States. I concluded that I would be able to get enough political power. See what I'm doing here, I'm just looking at it, I'm trying to work out, like, do I have enough time, and I'm trying to work out if I have enough time to spend 150 political power and then get enough political power to justify on the United States and on the Soviet Union. And as it turns out, the answer is no, unfortunately. So I go back to that save I mentioned earlier, the one that I made to try and decide whether I wanted line artillery or not, in order to just reverse this mistake rather than going from the beginning. This is the last time, I think. Yeah, pretty sure. This is the last time in the whole run that I actually reload. And it's before I've done any fighting or anything like that. So, you know, hopefully you can forgive me my saves going. But yeah, I'm going to cut to the reload rather than going over some of the stuff I did in the full playthrough, because obviously lots of that gets undone. So here we are, post the reload. I'm just going to set up some of the production lines again and get all that stuff sorted out. I think I go slightly heavier towards support equipment in this run. A couple less on artillery, which I think was generally a good choice. Support equipment tended to be my largest deficit, so I think that was a good move. But let's get into the actual winning run. It starts here. Considering I only reloaded the 1st of January, I really don't feel that bad. So the time comes to set up the army, and I'm going to keep it real simple. I'm just going to put everyone in Berlin again, and the only units we're going to use are infantry. I'm not going to delete the panzer battalions. I'm going to drive them into the ground instead, because they are useful as, you know, elite hole stoppers. But in terms of what we're going to train, it's going to be infantry, and it's going to be infantry all the way. We're going to train 20 wits. I do later make a transition into 40 wits. The transition is incomplete in the current state of the run, but yeah, I'm going to start off with 20s. We need to just fill gaps, and 20s are much easier to cycle, meaning pulling a unit out so it can recover some organization, then putting it back into an army. So yeah, I think 20 wits is the way to go for the start here. Now, let's talk a bit about unit composition. As I mentioned earlier, defense is not massively important, so I'm sticking with the 20 wits. We are not going to put any support companies in. I do consider it. I decide not to. Just the very standard support artillery, engineers, and then 10 infantry battalions gives us our beautiful 20 wits divisions. And I think that's all we're going to need. We are going concentrated industry, and I want to talk quickly about why you should always go concentrated industry. Someone asked me to do this in the comments of a previous video. I am not privy to the maths behind this logic, so I apologize that I cannot give you those. I'm trying to persuade the person who did do these maths is KLS. If any of you know him, I think it was him. He has the maths, at least, in a spreadsheet. Essentially, if you have a factory producing the same item for 400 days, then concentrated industry is better than dispersed industry. That's all I know. Obviously, we're going to want to be producing most of our equipment for more than 400 days in this case. That's going to be fighter ones, that's going to be infantry equipment, that's going to be RT ones, that's going to be support equipment. Everything gets produced for more than 400 days. So it's going to be strictly mathematically better to use concentrated industry. Most of the time, if you know what you want, concentrated industry is going to be the way to go. And really, if you don't know what you want, that's something you should work on, because knowing what you want in advance helps you with production efficiency. And so you should always be trying to know what you're going to want in the future and build now what you'll want then, rather than switching things up. As you can see, I'm just considering, is manpower going to be an issue? Are we going to be able to get to that Anschluss amount in time? And we'll see. So here we see what I was talking about earlier. In order to get the war support necessary to keep our war economy going without getting strikes, we're going to justify on the Soviet Union, we're going to justify on the USA. That spikes world tension up to 92%, which gives us war support of 67%, which is plenty. So with that, we can avert the strikes, and long live the German war economy. So now here we find ourselves quite a bit later in the run. I've built up slightly more troops, and I'm working on the order of battle. And here's where I want to talk about how I decided to go about where the front lines were going to be that we were going to try and defend. And I think the front lines I chose were substantially better than I did in the on-camera campaigns that you've seen. They were also a lot better than the ones I tried in other iterations of this that are no longer accessible to the public. The recordings have been deleted. They were disasters. So what I decided was we are going to push. We're going to push Czechoslovakia, we're going to push Poland, we're going to push the Netherlands. I've been often pushing the Netherlands back to the Rhine and holding the Rhine. That is the right front line to hold in the west, definitely. The Rhine is just such a huge river crossing. It's so good, it's so easy to hold against the AI by comparison to anything else. All the way to the Oder, you want to hold the Rhine. In the east, if we can push to the Vistula, running through Poland, that gives us such a wonderful front line against the Soviets, against the Poles, against the Romanians that do come north and fight us in that Polish territory. If we can push to Czechoslovakia, it substantially shortens the front. That big Sudetenland bulge is disgusting, and we need to deal with it. And the way we're going to deal with it is by pushing through with our glorious 3 panzer divisions, encircling, hopefully, the Prague area and storming through. And here comes the greatest coup in our campaign so far, Anschluss. How can anyone say that Austria is not German? That wonderful 3-state addition and many factory addition to our empire, as well as all of this free equipment in the form of these divisions. I sit here, I consider, should we try and switch the divisions to our template? But then, you know, I try that, a bunch of them go green, so no, let's not be silly, let's just delete them. And, you know, we get all the free equipment. And now it's time to start drawing up the final battle plans. This region here that we're drawing up through Austria, that front line that I just drew, that will be the most hotly contested region of the entire war. Watch this space. Some millions and millions of men will die for trying to take those mountains from me. It's a glorious, glorious battle that will be mostly commanded by Rommel. And who's it that comes in later? I can't remember, but Rommel does some sterling work in the Alpine mountains, and yeah, we'll see a lot of action on that front in the coming years. So here we are on the 17th of December, and the time has finally come. I start building some forts. I've been really focusing hard on those mill factories, but now I think it is time to try and get a couple of these forts done, just to give us a little bit of extra help in those trouble spots. I don't go for a great big fort wall. I just go for some very tailor, you know, boutique forts, if you will. So I go in some of the spots that I know are going to be tough. That Vienna area gets absolutely pounded, and you need to have a couple of forts in there. You don't need to, but a couple of forts in there really make it a lot easier. I'm generally picking a couple of areas that I know the AI can attack from many, many directions, because even though the combat width in this mod is greatly, greatly increased, the number of directions the AI can attack from heavily influences the number of divisions the AI will throw at a certain tile, irrespective of the combat width. So I put a couple of forts on the Rhine, a couple of forts down in Austria, and those really, you see them make a big difference. Those ones on the Swiss border especially, absolute lifesavers. This was a, if I may say so, this was a very good choice. So here it is, the New Year's fiasco. Hitler, unfortunately, while very drunk, gave away our plans and told the world that we were going to conquer them. And they're not best pleased. So it begins. And with a few last tweaks and a suitably ominous bit of music going on in the background, I believe in just a second here, unfortunately, the Allies decide enough is enough. Drunken Hitler's plans revealed to the world. They have decided that the time has come to bring down the German threat. And just as I'm signing a couple of extra divisions here to the Czech front, if I'm not mistaken, there it is. The war to end all wars. France declares war on me. Now you have to pardon the game for a moment while it lags out a bit as I click on these Holy Schnitzel events, which add in all the countries of the world into the war. It does it in stages, because if you add them all at once, I guess it has a higher chance of overloading your CPU and crashing. But it has begun. The wars have been declared. The die is cast. Christo has crossed the Rubicon, so on and so forth. Let's get this party started. So my first act of the war, I put the aircraft up, and we split them up into a couple of different divisions, and I'm putting them in the areas where I'm most concerned that my push has to be fast. We have to push to those rivers, push to those defensible terrains, push to those forts as quickly as we can before the whole freaking world shows up on the front line and makes pushing all but impossible for the time being. So I put those planes over Poland, I put them over Czechoslovakia, and that allows me to initiate this massive charge into Poland. And it's vitally important that this charge reaches the Vistula within a matter of preferably days. Weeks are acceptable. If it takes a month, we're going to have big problems, because by the time we get there, the Soviets will have arrived. If the Soviets arrive, it's going to take a long time. And if it takes a long time, the Chinese are going to arrive. The Japanese are going to arrive. Everyone is going to be freaking on this front. And I want to be holding the Vistula. I do not want to be trying to hold out here on the Poznan line or anything like that. We need to get to the Vistula. As well as the all-important push to the Vistula, we also start the push over to Copenhagen. We start the push towards Amsterdam and the Rhine in the Netherlands. We rearrange a couple of guys over to the Alps, and most importantly, we begin the mad dash towards Prague. I'm not sure what happened with the Czech AI, but I am going to take it. The tanks push in from the north, the infantry collapse around, and we see what we can do to cut them off. Now we are presented by a question of power. Obviously Hitler started this mess, and so there are those who think Göring should take command, but no, we keep Hitler in charge. We're going to keep him at the helm of our nation, and the reason we're going to keep him is because he has that 25% political power bonus, and political power is so valuable now that the game has all these decisions, many of which cost political power. Possibly all of which cost political power. Now I think about it, actually. So yeah, we keep Hitler in charge for now. As you can see, the movement into the Prague Czech area is going extremely well. The tank push from the north succeeds in really crushing down very quickly, enabling us to rush through Prague without them being able to push any reinforcements in from Slovakia. This allows us to capture those glorious military factories in Prague, as well as, of course, the civilian ones. But I was so pleased to get those military factories in Prague. In some previous attempts, I'd abandoned those. I decided it wasn't worth it. I'm very glad that we did get them in this one. There's a number of very valuable factories in Prague that we started putting to use extremely early, only 12 days into 1937, and we have those factories working for us. That's extremely valuable. So now all we have to do is move, close some pockets, smooth up this border, get to the freaking Vistula, which took me longer than I hoped, but we're making progress. And we should be in pretty good shape. And here's where we start to see some real progress. We sweep round from the north to help out on the Danish front, but most importantly, we achieve this pocket in Poland, which allows us to rapidly move to Danzig, eliminate a lot of their men on Poznan. There will be no miracle at Poznan in this war. The troops now have an almost unopposed path towards Warsaw, and the pocket in Prague looks like all but an inevitability. We do get a huge number of potential propaganda efforts, which I find quite funny. But yeah, we don't think we need to do much war propaganda right now. The German people are pretty much convinced that they need to fight this war and they need to fight it to the last. The push into Amsterdam takes quite a while, but fortunately, not many French divisions rush up. There is no what's it called? Breeder variant executed in this one. We don't have any French and British divisions rushing north to assist the Belgians or the Dutch. So not too much problem had in the Netherlands. A little bit of a danger just there, which we do manage to avoid, of a pocket, but it should be okay. We rush some more guys in from the east. I'm rush deploying everyone I can get. Generally, we're trying to get as many troops on the front as quickly as possible. Now, with the magic of editing, we're going to go frame by freaking frame, because I want to show you the air situation, and this is the best clip I could find of it, I'm afraid. As you can see, the Allies decided to put the vast majority of their planes over the Alpine region, and they pretty much kept them there for most of the first year of the war. I had air superiority over Czechoslovakia, Poland, Western Germany, and the Benelux region for most of the war. I think that's because they decided the Alpine region was their best hope to really push in against me, because there's no big river there. So that's where they were trying to push. I think that's why they kept most of their planes in that region. But it really worked to our advantage in lots of the other regions, where it let us have the basically no defense penalty, because we didn't have that enemy air superiority. Although it did make fighting the Alpine region a real pain. Now, as you can see a little bit later, I started to have some real problems in Czechoslovakia. I wanted to push to that turquoise front line there. We're one tile short on just a couple of places, and I really wanted to push there because there's mountains, there's forts in that victory point, and controlling that victory point gives us control of the state. Control of the state means we get a couple more factories, and if we need to, we can increase the infrastructure. So I'm trying to push in from the north first, but I have real trouble. It's a hill province, it's pretty well defended. Those divisions in there turn out to be pretty tough. As it turns out, we do manage to take that northernmost province, but a lot of the rest of that line we're not able to push into, and that makes some of those hill and even a plains province there on the front line, which provides a real problem. The wrapping up of the war in the Netherlands really begins with the establishment of this pocket. We can wipe out now a bunch of Dutch divisions, giving us free rein to take The Hague and secure our grasp on the Rhine defense wall. And here you can see the moment that I decide, okay, we're going to stop here. We're not going to get to take those mountain provinces, but we've got hills, we've got woods, then we've got a fort province. That's not too bad. We're going to stay here, we're going to dig in. So I'm going to build a couple of forts just to shore up those provinces, because I was expecting to be able to hold the mountain tile just beyond it. But I think these ones are actually pretty good. They can only be attacked from one direction, which makes them relatively easy to hold. Now we just move our attention north a little bit. We can push the final two tiles to the Vistula, which I believe completes our grasp on that defensive wall that I've been working on so hard. We have the Rhine to the west, we have the Alps to the south, we have the Vistula to the east. It's looking pretty good, and as you can see, because we built all those military factories, we're still pounding out infantry divisions at a nice click. So there we go, the defensive line is established, and the battle for the Alps begins. So as you can see, a couple of weeks have passed. The Allies have mostly been launching some probing attacks. I'm feeling pretty good. We've got a pretty good front, but I'm aware the main attack has not yet come. We check the casualties, as you can see. Not very many men. Only 42,000 men lost in my good push to the Rhine. And then this happens. The second I put it on speed 3, there's a massive assault all the way along the line. I think maybe every tile got freaking attacked. Let's go back down to speed 2 and reconsider speeding up. So I take survey of the situation. We've still got dominance in the air over most of the front, which means the area I'm really worried about is down in that Alpine region. That's where the fighting is going to be at its fiercest. So yeah, I'm not going to lie. When I saw that massive assault start all the way along the line, and then I saw this red battle on the Alps, my heart sank. I had felt so good up to this point. We've been doing really well. We've taken a fantastic front line. This is the real test. It starts at this point, because now we're not only facing the local forces. Up to this point, we're basically only fighting our neighbors. Now, they've had a couple of weeks. They've had, what is it now, a month and a half since the war started. At this point, the American divisions show up. The Chinese divisions show up. The South American divisions show up. We really start to see a massive increase in the number of men on the front. And with the new AI improvements, they're no longer going to massively overstack the front. If you watch the front line throughout this campaign, the AI never starts suffering massive attrition because of their oversupply. They're not moving into those supply regions. They're keeping the supply low. They're just putting so many men there. Even with that considered, though, that it really still remains an issue. You can see, if you look around the front, in the east and west, there are a couple of 40s, you see a couple of 52s, but it's not a massive issue. We're holding pretty well. It really is the Alps that are the problem. It's at this point that I decide this war calls for a new kind of force. So we're going to build our 40 width division. I mostly do this at this point just because I have a bunch of army experience. I don't want it to start going to waste. We don't really see any 40 width sea action for a long time yet. As you may know, it takes a very long time to train 40 width divisions, and training time was a big factor in this campaign. I really wanted to get those divisions out as quickly as I could. The second I started training them, I wanted them deployed right there, right then. Okay, so let's take a look at a few of the highlights of this first push. So here in the mountains south of Gauls, we face one of the toughest pushes of the opening hours of the campaign. There's a massive push coming in from this one tile, this one plains tile just north of Slovenia. Slovenia, I actually got it right for once. Just north of Slovenia, they're really pushing in hard there. And so I make the decision to activate last stand on the entire Alpine region. That costs so many command power, but it does mean that all of those battles should start going our way for a bit here. Generally, that means we can hold out there for a bit, but the thing is, that kind of command power expense we really can't keep up for very long at all. We're going to start running out of command power. If we can't activate last stand and we're still losing, that's it. They'll break through, and then we're in deep trouble. Here we are now, about 20 days into this bad push, and you can see that the Gauls offensive is still ongoing. We're still struggling to push it back. Our last stand has by this point run out, which means our troops are losing organization again, and we're really starting to have trouble. I'm rushing deploying a couple more men to the Dutch front, just try and make sure that shores up, and then the rest of them I decide I'm going to try and send down to the Alpine region. Just deploying a couple of military police here. This is the only bit of resistance that we really had to deal with for the most of the duration of this section of the run. There's just a little bit in Prague, a bit of the Sudetenland, and a little bit in Poznan. So I deployed, I believe it's 15 2-width cav divisions, and that should deal with that. We're moving more and more men now into this province south of Gauls to try and hold that line, and we do manage to turn the battle to our favour. A couple more forts are going up, putting them in those really important spots where I'm now continuing to learn where the hot spots are going to be and putting just a couple of forts in there to really make the difference. But I'm still trying to focus a high portion of our industry on more and more military factories, because I know that if I let the enemy just overtake me in terms of numbers and equipment account, it's really going to start being a problem. You know, we can put up as many forts as we want, but if they can really just pound on us forever and we start running out of equipment, that's when we're really going to see problems. As you can see, I have this little force that stays in the mountains behind the west wall, and I found them absolutely invaluable. They were so useful. They were basically just staying there most of the time, and then as soon as there was a problem on the west wall, they could rush in, fill the gap, provide those extra men in the place where they were needed. They saved my ass so many times. It's glorious. So I had these little, so this is what you can see, I'm making this army here, a little roving army, so I can put them in different places where I need them with these fallback lines, so they can move in and occupy the places where we're really seeing trouble. It was very successful. It worked really well. I'm going to start using that in future defensive campaigns. Having a little roving army behind the scenes, it seems extremely successful to me. So as you can see now, we're really starting to feel the pain on this Alpine front. I'm doing my best. I'm rush deploying division after division after division in here. I'm reorganizing the front lines so I can try and maximize the number of generals we have controlling this area of the front, so we can really fit in those extra troops. But we're really starting to feel the pain. You can see a couple of these fights begin to turn against us. We're defending in the mountains behind rivers, and we're still having them threatening to take provinces from us. And if we can't hold in the mountains behind a river with a fort, this was another low point. I was thinking, oh my god, we can't hold this mountain range, we can't hold the freaking Alps against the Italians. It was definitely a worrying moment. As our situation continues to deteriorate on the Alpine front, I come to the realization that it does look like we're going to have to start abandoning some provinces. I see this battle at 4. I see it's going to take me so long to get back in there, and even the divisions I can put in there, they're at low organization. I don't know if they're going to be able to hold it. And so it comes time to start thinking about, do we have to fall back? Do we have to try and take up positions further back? As you can see though, the only place I have to fall back to really is Innsbruck, that river on Innsbruck. And if we fall back to there, one tile behind there, we're out of the Alps. And if we're trying to hold the mountains in the lowlands around Munich rather than the Alps, and we couldn't hold the Alps, we are not going to hold the lowlands of Munich. So we're going to go back one step no farther. If we go anywhere past that, that's when they'll sweep through and the run's over. And here it is in a moment just missed off camera as I was checking on the Rhine front. The tile is lost, and that angry mouth jerking is not to be exaggerated. I consider putting the planes in, but I really don't want to muck with the Allied AI on the planes right now, because they seem to be happy to put them all over the Alpine region. In the Alpine region, it's a great place for us to fight. Mountains are great to defend. So I try a counter-offensive. We come at it from all sides. Everyone's slamming into that tile. We're going to push them back. We're going to try and re-establish the original front line. But it's a heavy slog to try and do that. And meanwhile, they're pressing us in the east. And so we try and move some guys around over there. But it's going to be a close one. It's going to be very close. If we could retake that tile, it's good because it shortens the line. It means that we have to defend less tiles, which means they have less potential combat width offensive, like at the consecutive combat width offensive capabilities of the enemy is lowered, the lower your front line is. But as you can see, the reinforcements flood the tile and the attack is just not to succeed. So I call it off. We stand back and we reassess the situation. This puts that tile to the left of the one we lost under such heavy pressure. For a long time now, they're going to charge into that province from 2 directions, and it really takes an absolute beating. We're going to need to flood that province with enough divisions to attempt to hold it back. Again, they're pushing now to the tile directly south of Innsbruck, pushing us back to our final line of defense, and the desperate last stand begins. Anyone can see the defense of the tile south of Innsbruck is hopeless, and so with heavy heart I assign the men to a fallback line behind the province. I am going to continue fighting for the province for 2 reasons. Firstly, it's a great province to defend. That means we're inflicting heavy damage on them as they come in at us. And secondly, to allow the unit holding the new fallback line, which is still a mountain, so I'm not feeling too bad about it, is going to have that extra bit of time to entrench, to gain organisation, to get ready for the oncoming onslaught. A 3rd province comes under threat, and I really don't want to lose this one, because if we lose this, again, it widens up the front line. It means that tile directly to its right is under serious threat, because now it can be attacked from an extra direction, which means it's going to be weakened, and I really don't want that tile to the right to be weakened, because it's such a strong position to hold right now with that river. But with this battle spiraling out of control, it looks like we're going to have to lose all 3 of these tiles and re-establish the new line on the Innsbruck line, and then moving down onto the river. It's not the worst thing in the world. We've still got the mountains, we've still got the Alps fighting on our side.
And so after another 10 days of vicious fighting, we find ourselves in the new situation. All 3 tiles have fallen, the defense line is drawn up. In the east, we can afford to lose maybe 1 tile, maybe 2. In the center though, like I said, we lose 1 tile, we are right up against Munich, and that's when we're going to start having serious problems. I've gone to heavy micro mode with a whole bunch of fallback lines. I want to keep these divisions exactly where I put them. Westwall, the southmost province of Westwall, is coming under a bit of threat, but those mountain reserves really bring it home in terms of getting in there when they're needed and really turning those battles in my favour. As you can see, I have a couple of a general just commanding just 2 men. What he's doing that for is so that I can really precisely use the last stand command power ability. It costs about 15 command power, and you do it with 220 width battalion divisions, excuse me. So we can do that approximately once a month. That basically makes those 2 divisions indestructible for that 7-day period that the ability is active. And if that really helped us hold provinces, especially that tile south of Gauze, that last stand ability saved our ass a number of times in really just being able to make the divisions stand their ground and hold back those aggressors while we were trying to defend that crucial little corner down there. And here you can see the main offensive into the new defensive line. We're holding it back pretty well, but before we can rest and celebrate that too much, we have to look east. Gauze is now under serious threat. The tile to the south of Gauze holding pretty well, but Gauze itself is now coming under serious attack. That city terrain is giving them nasty debuffs though, so not doing too badly. I'm not talking too much about the Rhine, because it's pretty much just holding. It's not too bad. Down here in Gauze, Alpine, this is where the serious, intense close quarters fighting of the war is going on. This is where we came closest to breaking. And here is that moment. I think this is the closest they came to seriously penetrating our line. Look at that fight on Gauze. The reinforcements are right there, but are they going to get there in time? There's at least another 4 divisions coming in to reinforce. If they can get there, they can really bring it home. I'm thinking everything. What can I do? What can I do? So I'm looking at the general. I'm thinking, can I increase the general's stats? Maybe. But then the problem is, if I spend the command power on the general, then maybe I'll be losing command power I could have been spending on a last stand ability. And that really could be even worse. So, I mean, I don't know. It comes incredibly close on that Gauze tile. And we lose that, it all falls apart. This, by the way, is the Age of Mythology soundtrack. One of my favourite games of my youth. Good times. So as you can see here, what I end up doing is I get my my general out of my pocket again. We throw on that last stand. That means these divisions now will no longer lose organization. That means they will just be able to hold. There you go. Long enough for those reinforcements to arrive. Now the reinforcements are here. We can deploy more guys here. The situation in Gauze is substantially less bad than it was. We're rush deploying these men pretty much without any artillery, which does seriously negatively affect their soft attack. All their other stats too, but mostly their soft attack. But really, that was one of the closest moments. We did just, using those 2 bouts of last stand, manage to stabilize the situation on Gauze so we could get those extra men in, have the reinforcements arrive. Reinforcements were moving so slowly because of the massive, massive allied air coverage over the Alpine region, but we just managed to get them in time, pull it back from the brink, and hold Gauze. So, as you can see, a fair amount of time has passed. And essentially the same thing has been going on. We've been having intense fighting down in the Alpine region. I've been deploying more and more reserves there to try and hold that front, cycling men in and out, especially on that Slovakian tile where we had those forts but no terrain bonus. It was particularly intense fighting there. But there you go. This is the moment that things start going our way. Now I have enough command power that I feel I don't need to be using it on last stand all the time, which means I can start improving my generals. And that really is a tipping point. When I can start getting my generals having infantry leader to start with, which is 15% extra defense on all infantry divisions, and then I can start giving them that assigned infantry leader trait, which gives them 15% more attack, that crucial attack on infantry divisions. That's really when we start to see it turn around. We eventually see that trait coming through on almost all of our generals, and that 15% bonus to attack and defense on all of our divisions, all but 3 anyway, really starts to make the difference and means we can start winning some fights here rather than just scraping by on the last stands. Now, honestly, I could show you a lot of instances of moments it came close. We had fights regularly going down to red 5s. I was panicking. We were throwing out last stands. We were deploying CAS. It was all getting pretty freaking intense for quite a long time. I could, if I wanted, edit down 100 instances of moments where the line came close to breaking. I'm not going to, for both our sakes. This will take too long. So here we are quite a bit later. By this point, the line, it's a lot more stable. I'm occasionally moving troops into trouble areas, but essentially at this point, I'm banging out enough men that we really have a much, much more stable front. Here we are only, 6 months into the war? Feels like a freaking age. So far, this has been running for about 3 hours. We've been very consistently on speed 2 until very recently when I did bump it up to speed 3. That's the sign of the fact that I'm getting more confident. We're holding these positions a bit easier. Troops are still cycling, the enemy's still coming, but it's beginning to tip in our favor. And the longer the allies give us to build up, the longer that we can hold this line, the more we can get our industry going behind this fort wall, and the closer we get to the inevitable point where we can start overtaking them, where we can start producing enough stuff that we're not just holding the line, we can push the line. As soon as we push the line, we take more factories, we make more stuff, we push the line, and we're getting closer every minute. So a quick slowed down look at the status of the war as it stood on the 4th of July 1937, 6 and a tiny bit months into this war, and here we go. We have 2.2 million in the field with only just under 300,000 casualties. We've managed to pump those allied casualties to 4.2 million casualties and a lot more equipment than that. We're really starting to bring the pain to these allies. They're putting a massive offensive all the way along the front, and they've kept that up consistently for months and months. It's beginning to take its toll on the allied numbers. We're seeing much more low strength divisions on the front, lower chance of success on their attacks, less of those times where I really feel like I need to bring out the last stand, and I couldn't be happier. And here we are, now getting to a point where it really feels quite stable. We've got many more men on the front line. We've got a heavy concentration of troops down here in the Alpine region. We've got pretty much assigned infantry commander traits on all of our generals. We've got command points that I basically feel like I don't need for last stand anymore, so I can just throw them at approving my generals. We've got a very nice, stable situation. Our units are gaining experience. You'll see we have a lot of veterans. We are now starting to see a couple of people with the absolute maxed out experience that we have demonstrated in the field. What is the tier above veteran? No, it's regulars then veterans, I think. Anyway, we're starting to see those skulls on our unit experiences, and it feels good. They're launching these offensives, offensive after offensive. When they launch a big one, I'm going to slow it down a bit, assess the situation, but most of the time, it's hands off. We're just pounding out more divisions, and as you can see, those divisions are now the 40 wits. We're really starting to bring out the big guns at this point, and it's turning in our favor, and it feels good. I know I've said that before, but it really does. We're producing a lot more military factories now, rather than producing those forts that we felt like we needed to for a bit there. So it's really starting to turn in our favor. We're getting the economic game turning in our favor, and at that point, it's a ball rolling downhill from here on in, I think. So now here we are, hours, and I mean hours later, and I feel like we're finally stable enough that we can start to make some aggressive moves. And of course, the first target, it's easy to pick. I take my newly deployed 21 40 combat width infantry. You put them under... who's that? I can't actually make out which general we use. You can see it on the screen. My editing software is rubbish. And we decide we're going to go after that Swedish steel. We need the tungsten. The tungsten's going to be useful. It's easy land, it's easy factories. There's a nice defensible territorial border in the north, and so we head up with our newly deployed men to Sweden. And now we've waited for the planning bonus and organization to come up, and finally the push starts. The first major advance we've made for many an hour, and we push into Sweden against a Chinese general, believe it or not, because this mod is funny. And so we begin our advance into Scania, and Sweden crumbles relatively quickly from this point. We break through, we push in, there's some grand encirclements, and we find ourselves in full control of Sweden and southern Norway, all the way up to Trøndelag. A couple of good encirclements, about another 1 million allied forces destroyed during the invasion of Sweden, and we find ourselves in a new stable position, now with quite a bit more land in the frozen north. So I wanted to show off the strength of our newly deployed 40 combat with divisions with all of those traits on our generals, with all of that experience, with now a fairly sizable amount of air power standing behind them. And here's a good way to demonstrate that. So here we are in the mountains of Norway, just to the east of Trondheim. It's not called Trondheim, but I always call it Trondheim for some reason. What is it called? It doesn't matter. Anyway, there's a seriously heavily fortified province that you'll see in a moment. Which if we can take, we can encircle a serious number. I believe it's somewhere in the region of 400 to 500,000 allied divisions. It's currently being held, however, by something like 35 allied divisions, and we only have 5 or 6 to come in against it. Seems like an impossible task, but as you will see, it really isn't. These divisions have experience, they are 40 width, they have air support. Even though that battle starts red, it really isn't that tough. We get some extra men in there, we get some air support, and we will win the day. And there you go. We punched through those allied divisions like they aren't even there, and now all that remains is to wrap up those left behind. Of course, we're going to try and take the port first to make sure we don't allow any of them to escape out of this pocket, inflict the maximum damage we can in this glorious victory. And now, here we are, pretty much at the end. This was the point where I decided, yep, we've won this one. I've established a stable front line. They can pour all they want into Europe at this point. My line will never break. I have forts. I have something like a 5-level fort wall across the entire front. At this stage, we've got a great front line in Sweden. We've got expansion opportunities. This is where I called it a win. I'm not stopping here, though. I am going to carry on this campaign. There will be a future video. It may be edited like this one. It may not be. But yeah, I will do a final thing, but I think that is what I can call a victory, because at this point there is no way they can break me, and there obviously is a way I can break them. At this point, I deploy the medium tanks and I can storm my way through the Allied lines, and that's what I'll be doing in the next part. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the edited video. I haven't done, really, an edited video ever before. This took me a god almighty amount of time. From starting the run until finishing took, look at the clock, Jesus Christ, that took me almost 12 hours, which is nuts. This is the answer to why I don't do many edited videos, but I really hope you enjoyed it. It was good fun to make. I enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed facing myself with an NSEAG-like challenge like this and managing to pull it off. Anyway, I hope to see you in the next video, which will probably be a Twitch VOD. I'm not sure. I might edit it down. I could do a Twitch VOD and then edit it down. But yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Thank you ever so much for watching, and I do hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.